You can't predict what you can't see. The first thing is to get that visibility so that you can protect.
So you are basically the guard that we have outside our doorsteps. It's essentially you in a corporate setup. Can one say that?
Non-human identities outnumber human identities by 1:55,
Yeah.
right? So that's the data that is out there. And on the other side, only 40% of the applications exist within your organization. It might be one person using Claude or one of those applications. The problem is the company data, the corporate data is going in there, right, into these applications, and companies have no clue about it.
The first 100 customers Zluri acquired, we acquired without stepping foot into the country.
How are you sort of tracking them? Not only tracking, governing them, are you using AI to detect AI?
That for every single user, there's close to about 40 to 45 identities which are not humans. So that's the ratio, 1 is to 40 to 45, depending on company to company. So if you have 10,000 users in the organization, 10,000 employees, you would actually find close to 450,000 non-human identities.
Wow. Are you in the vitamin business or are you in the painkiller business? Like when you pitch to a CISO or a security technology lead in an organization?
We are a painkiller, right? So at least I don't consider ourselves as a vitamin.
Especially with AI agents blowing up right now, can I start understanding anomaly behavior of these particular AI agents and then cut off their access itself before certain things actually happen? Can I get this to a near real-time scenarios itself right now when some, let's say, malevolent actor is actually acting using an AI agent right now? Can I stop the access itself before it impacts a lot more?
So that's where we are governing every identity on how they are navigating within your organization and ensuring that right people have right access to right resources at the right time.
So how would your 2-minute pitch look like to me?
Hey Srija, nice to meet you. You are the CISO of a large company and you are responsible for security of not just your employees, your customers' data, employees' data. Can I ask you a question? At any point in time, Srija, if somebody asks you who has access to what system in your company to get what job done, do you have the answer?
Hello and a very warm welcome to everybody. With me is Zluri now, a very interesting company which actually governs every identity in your work environment. The ones that you know and thousands that you don't. With me is Ritesh Reddy, the founder and the CEO of Zluri right now. In my next 30 minutes with Ritesh, I would like to unpack the conversation with three lenses. Essentially, the genesis, the vision, mission of the company, the second aspect really being the growth strategy, and the third really being from the revenue perspective, that what the founding team thinks that where they are on the trajectory. Ritesh, thank you for joining us today. First question, the way Zaluri is defined, that identity as the security perimeter. That is the core thesis. From a non technical standpoint, and somebody who is not coming from a technical background, how would you explain the Zaluri proposition to them, say without using the word technology?
Sure. Very simple, right? But firstly, thanks for having me on this podcast. Let's take a personal example, right? All of us use our cell phones and we take pictures, right? So, how do you secure your pictures? You have a phone and you are the identity, you are a human identity, and you have all your belongings in terms of digital assets, whether it's your photographs or your emails or your bank credentials, all of that stored on your phone. So to access that phone, you have a password, right? And then within that, you have various applications. And then to log into any application, again, you enter a username, password. So your identity as a human identity, you're securing various assets and resources that you have within your phone using those credentials and passwords, right? Now, if you take the same example in the context of corporates or workforce, in any organization, there are hundreds of employees. Now, there are various tools, applications, corporate resources. It could be your AWS data centers, whatever it may be. So they need to be accessed by your employees, right? Employees, the identity in here, you are referring to human identities. They need to access these resources. Right people need to have right access to right resources at the right time. So how do you ensure that happens is something what a platform like us, which is an identity security platform, does, right? So from what we do personally and how we handle our identities in the digital workplace, so the same thing extends to a corporate world as well, and that's what we protect.
Great. So right now, from a technical standpoint, and I'm not talking from a corporate standpoint, I have a company. Some of my employees are in Singapore. My marketing team is accessing the dashboard using GitHub, right? Sitting there. Maybe some AI bot has been created by a vendor 3 months ago, which I don't know of. And and that bot, I don't know, he or she, it, whatever it is actually accessing my admin control also, right? That is the second kind of challenge that I'm referring to. The third thing is then the various kind of SaaS kind of platforms also used in that organization, and every employee has an access to it. So you basically govern every identity that has access to my organization. So in a way, you are basically the perimeter, fencing, safeguarding what can enter and what cannot enter. So, in a way, you become the most trusted custodian when it comes to security for my organization. So, my first question to you is that am I getting it correct? My understanding about identity, the security perimeter for Zluri?
Absolutely. Right. So if you just play back to maybe pre-COVID, if I may call, I was part of a very large cybersecurity company. And the way we used to access our resources was we used to connect to a VPN. And a lot of us will be able to relate to this, right? We connect to a VPN and then we access even our email
Yeah.
or any of those
Yeah.
applications that you want to access. But post COVID, one of the paradigm shift that has happened is these barriers that were there in terms of connecting to VPN and connecting to networks and accessing your resources have been taken down, right? So the new way in which you access these resources is through your identity. You might be sitting in Singapore, you might be sitting in US, you might be sitting in Spain, wherever you are, you could access the same resources by just clicking on your single sign-on system, right? So now people are not connecting to the corporate networks anymore. So they are connecting to the identity, and identity is authenticating them. And then you are able to access the corporate resources within your organization. So the perimeter was network pre-COVID, right? That was a predominant security perimeter for organizations. But today, if you look at it, the way people access their resources, it has become identity. So identity has emerged as a new security perimeter within organizations.
And you are governing that identity.
Absolutely.
And your product, what you have established is the governance and the access of identity in organizations. So you govern that and you control their access. So you are basically the guard that we have outside our doorsteps. It's essentially you in a corporate setup. Can one say that?
What we essentially do is the authorization part of an identity. So you as an employee, if you're logging into certain organization, so we are in a position to tell you which applications can you access and what level of authorizations can you access within these organizations. And also there are a set of policies that we need to enforce for every employee within an organization. We are the custodians of those policies. We make sure that those policies are enforced. Whenever there are drifts in terms of these policy implementations within your organization, we are the ones who are taking care of healing those identities or identity drifts, and then ensure your organization at any point of time has a right security posture from an identity perspective.
But why should I get you as a vendor? Because you come at a significant cost to me, right? So, how compelling is your proposition? And how much of that is a push versus pull?
See, I think today, if you look at organizations, you're dealing with very critical set of data, right? It might be your customer data, it might be a lot of financial data. So it depending on the industry, depending on the company that we are talking about. Every company has a lot of sensitive information that is in the hands of the employees, or that information is in certain systems to which employees have access to. So in order to ensure that every party or counterparty that we are referring to in this context is protected in the right way. So what needs to happen is there are certain governance standards, there are certain regulatory requirements that exist, whether you take a SOC 2 or a GDPR, or for that matter, in India, we just passed the Data Protection and Privacy Act recently, right? So any breach or any violation that happens has huge repercussions for the organization, not just financially, but from a credibility perspective as well. Because we are living in a trust economy, right? So if you lose that trust, I think it has serious ramifications on how you conduct your business and the value that gets impacted from a business perspective. So that's where it is mandatory or imperative for a lot of these organizations, especially organizations which are operating in highly regulated industries, to comply with these regulations.
So the huge, massive AI adoption has made your work relatively much easier in terms of educating about the threats and the challenges, the potential threat vectors that you spoke about, which this AI sprawl brings with itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. So earlier we were talking about SaaS sprawl,
Yeah.
right? So with SaaS sprawl, people used to say, hey, I understand only maybe 40-50% of the applications that are being accessed by my identities in an organization. I understand. I don't know the 50%, but I don't really care because these are long tail applications, someone using Spotify, someone using something else. I don't really want to get into that, right? But today, when you talk about that AI sprawl and that long tail of applications that exist within your organization, it might be one person using a Claude or one of those applications. The problem is the company data, the corporate data is going in there, right, into these applications, and companies have no clue about it. So if you take any of those frontier models, say, let's take Anthropic or any of those models, people are constantly engaging with it, you're chatting with it. There is only one single button in these applications that says, do you want to use the data to train my model or not? Right. So people don't know, people don't check, right? As consumers, as employees, we don't really get into that. We want to get an outcome, we put in our data and then try to extract information. But some of these models are getting trained, right? So we have seen companies which come and tell us, hey, my production code is going into chat gpt for testing before it gets into my product, right? So that's the challenge that companies have today. So they're more worried about the long tail applications because they don't know what's happening there, what's getting trained there, is the data being used for training. They don't have a clue.
So I think your market opportunity will continuously grow as the AI penetration happens in this country and the adjoining markets, right? Because as the penetration grows deeper, the challenges and the threats will only grow up, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me one thing, Ritesh, are you in the vitamin business or are you in the painkiller business? Like when you pitch to a CISO or a security technology lead in an organization, are you adding to the revenues incrementally? You're more on the downside than the upside, is what I'm understanding. You protect the downside than getting the upside.
I would say that number one, we are a painkiller, right? So we don't, at least I don't consider ourselves as a vitamin, right? The point being, and to the second question or second part that you had, hey, are you helping them with their upside or downside, right? We are in the security business, right? I'm sure you'd have seen the recent challenge that one of the largest automobile companies had. They had a cyber attack in UK, and they had to shut down their entire business for a few days, and the losses ran into few hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And they had no security cover. They didn't have a cyber security insurance. They didn't have, and no one was insuring them because of the fact that they didn't have enough security controls in place. So we have seen all these scenarios play out, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is the impact of not having the right controls in place, the right platforms or tools to control your identities and govern those identities in place is huge. We in US we have seen CISOs being put behind bars by SEC because you haven't been able to comply with some of these governance requirements that are there, and you haven't been able to report to the regulator at the right time. We are in the early cycles of AI adoption in enterprises, but imagine the scenario where 80-90% of adoption happens within enterprises. So this problem is only going to go multifold, and humans will have no control on the threat vectors that are coming in. You can't manually manage these threat vectors and manage the risk within your organization. So that's where it becomes very, very imperative for companies to have some of these tooling. For example, in US and some of the mature markets, if you want to get a cyber insurance for your company, companies insist on having some of these tools as a mandatory implementation. Without this, they'll not even insure, or even if they insure, the premiums are going to be super high. If you are an enterprise, if you want to run your business, this is like a must-have tooling that you need to have to make sure right people have right access, right resource, the right time. I'm repeating this statement again because this is like the only thing that needs to be managed in the age of AI, right? If you think about it, everything getting automated within your organization, your payroll gets automated, your HR gets automated, your code development gets automated, and all of this is being run by bots. So, would you give the autonomy of authentication and authorization to a bot, or would you want to have controls in place, right? So, that's a kill switch. I want to have a tooling in place, and as a human I want to manage this tooling effectively for me to ensure that whether humans are running my systems and processes, or non-humans or machine identities or agents are running my systems and processes, I want to have that control in place, and that's the control that I put in before I go in and make any business, right? So that's how critical our system is in the context of enterprises, and that's why I consider this as a painkiller in that context, and you need to have that in place before you go out there to run the business.
But tell me one thing, Ritesh, like you've established the problem statement, and I think it's driven home well that with the proliferation of AI and more sort of bots controlling critical aspects of your organization, from HR to admin to even sales, agentic AI throws open a lot of challenges. But that's an opportunity for a lot of similar kind of companies in your space who might also be having their IGA platforms, right? That's a huge space. So, what is it to say that Zluri will stand out? Is it a winner takes all market? Or will you tell me that Srija, the opportunity is so huge, there's a room for like 1,000 players in the next 10 years that we're talking about? Where do you stand in the way you're building out this organization?
Two parts, Shrija, right? The first part is we are not the first players to solve this particular problem, right? So the concept of identity, and specifically IGA, as we call it, Identity Governance Administration, has been there as a problem and solution category for the last 2 decades, and there are players who are listed in the US market. It does maybe $1.2 billion of revenue as well. And it's not a new category that we are coming today and creating. So where we are disrupting, or where we are adding value to this whole ecosystem, is we see that the solutions existing out there in the market have been built for the human scale, right? If you think of products which are built 10 years, 15 years, 20 years back, so back then it was all human identities, and the systems are all on prem back then, right? Or most of it is managed set of applications where all the applications are connected to SSOs. So as time passed over the last 20 years, today we are in a day and age where non-human identities outnumber human identities by 1 is to 55,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's the data that is out there. And on the other side, only 40% of the applications are federated behind your SSO, single sign-on system. What it means is companies do not have a clue on the remaining 60%. So that's where we identified, or the problem statement that we are solving as a modern identity security platform, is that the systems that are built, they're not built for non-human scale, they're built for human scale. So that's where we see an opportunity to disrupt the space and position ourselves for the future of the problems that are going to come in the world of identity. The second part is the whole in the context of non-human scale. If you look at it, and if I have to deconstruct this identity infrastructure, right? So broadly, you have single sign-on system, then you have your Identity Governance Administration, and third one is privileged access management. As SaaS adoption or cloud adoption started to happen, there are certain problems that the legacy platforms weren't able to solve. So there are certain niche categories that have come up. SaaS security posture management. Then you have your SSPM. SSPM is SaaS security posture management. ISPM, identity security posture management. ITDR, identity threat detection and response. These are all small problem statements that have come up, and there are niche product solutions that have come up to address that. So now that construct holds beautifully well in the construct of human identities, right? If you are having privileged users in your organization, okay, there is a PAM solution which will take care of them. Now, think of an AI agent, right? So, an AI agent is orchestrating across various applications, and these AI agents are being created on the fly. So, now it doesn't make sense for an agent to go to an IGA tooling for a certain use case, a PAM tooling for a certain use case, ISPM for a certain use case. It doesn't make sense, right? So that's why this entire construct of identity infrastructure, which was defined a couple of decades back, there is a need to converge all these components on one single platform. And that's where we are differentiating ourselves as a converged platform, converged identity security platform. And the convergence need to happen on a visibility first architecture. And that's what we have pioneered today. And that's how we differentiate ourselves from a lot of these legacy platforms that have been built over the last couple of decades.
Okay, so talking about the support from the ecosystem, how has the India support been for you? What is the value add, if at all, you think that they have really contributed in your journey? Because what you're building is like a hardcore, boring product, if you
Yeah,
right. So, what do you think?
I think India has been our number one believers right from day, I would say, I don't know, day minus 20 or day minus 30. But that's how it has been, right? So uh, we, we, we were still in our previous roles, we were doing other things. And this was just an idea back then. And that's when we spoke to Satish, and then he believed in what we were trying to say. He saw the problem statement that we are talking about, and he believed that this could be a great value, not from an investment perspective, but there's a problem worth solving for, and which will have long legs in the years to come. He was the first believer, right? And first believers are always special, and that didn't end there for us, right? So it has been over 5 years since we started, close to 6 years since we started working together. And there have been different points of time on our journey. It wasn't always an upward trending curve.
Mhm.
Obviously there are ups and downs, technology changes, a lot of movements from a people perspective, geography perspective. So at every step, I think we always had sort of a advisor that we could lean on to. And it's just not Satish, right? What I find it beautiful is that when you are building it right as an organization, you usually surround yourself with a lot of good people as well. So it's the ecosystem that has been built, right? And you can lean on to them, you can get their support, advice, guidance. And if you look at it, every further capital raise that we have done, all of it, we were never in the market really, right? So it's the goodwill that we have been able to build. It's a goodwill Satish has built. So we've been able to say, hey, this is what we are doing. People become interested. Hey, it's worth looking at them. So it's a credibility and trust that we have carried from Satish for the uh, growth over the last 6 years. So that's how it has been a fantastic journey so far, and look forward to continuing that.
Interesting. That's quite fascinating. So now I have to put you on a hot seat. Time for rapid fire.
Sure.
If you have to name one company besides yours, which you're overawed with, what would that be?
The larger ones, or
Anything which you're very fascinated with.
uh,
Maybe like a startup.
startup, I'm just using this interesting app called Poke dot app. It's a messaging application. Essentially, it connects to your email, and then it keeps helping you on email, on messages. You don't need to get into your email. You just chat with it as if you're SMSing, and it's very convenient way to do it. So I was super uh, thrilled by the way it starts responding to you. So that's been my latest app that I've been fascinated with.
Okay. The biggest technology fad right now.
Technology fad. I think I was having this conversation with my dad. I think it's health tech. At least that's what my dad feels. I always used to wear a Whoop band out here. He said, "Hey," and we used to compare what is your biological age, and my dad says, "My biological age, I haven't used any of these gadgets. Is better than yours." And we've been discussing on that, and the conclusion is this is a fad. So there are better things to do to keep take care of your health. So that has been the conclusion.
Okay. The highest point in your career till now.
I think it to come. Yeah.
Okay. Yet to come. Okay. The lowest point. What would that be? Something which was a big revelation and learning point for you.
So the lowest point is, I think, in my career. So I think there was a point in career where I thought I could have play very large impact if I change the systems in our government, because that's the single most largest touch point for the larger population. So with that intent, I was in building sort of a treasury system for a large government agency. Spent 2 years doing that, but realized the needle really doesn't move. It's stuck by the bureaucracy, and I think that there was a sort of biggest disappointment where I ended up feeling that, hey, did I waste 2 years of my life early in the career? So maybe that's the lowest point.
Great, fascinating. And which you think like an Indian startup founder whom you're very, very impressed with and you look up to, who would that be?
I think Indian startup founders. I think for me, it has always been not a single founder that I completely
You have to
admire
give
as
the
a
name of one
persona,
founder.
but there have been different traits that I've seen in different people that I really like. Right, so some of them I would think, hey, great person from a marketing perspective, something that I need to learn from this person as from a people management perspective. So it's sort of a mix for different traits, not like there's this persona that I really want to be like or emulate, but different people, different personas that I draw from. Right from, I think, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, way back then. I used to write multiple emails after reading his book saying that this is what you can do to Big Bazaar, this is what you can do. So, I mean, I really loved his perspective from his approach towards the marketing, the Indian way, all of that stuff. I think there are these people that I get inspired from, not really working closely with majority of them, but through their writings, books, and what I hear from them. It's been a mixed bag for different traits.
Thank you, Ritesh. Thank you for so much. I would say opening up on your journey and giving us those fascinating insights, not only on the trajectory of your organization, but definitely where the industry is headed and what really the thinking lens that you are using to navigate the uncertainty in this space. Thank you so much, Ritesh. It's been a
Thanks for
fascinating
having me once
conversation.
again. So great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. So, this is the Act 2 of the Zluri story, and we have with us the dynamic CTO and the co founder of Zluri. As you can imagine, for a technology company like this, how critical the path on technology trajectory is. Chaitanya, thank you for joining us for this incredible conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Chaitanya, my first question to you, and I think from where Ritesh left, he spoke about building that Srija, we're building this high visibility infrastructure. And he said that this is unparalleled.
Yep.
So can you give us a sneak peek into the building components of it, that how are you building it?
So the discovery is the first thesis about how we started the company as well. So with that, I think right from day one, our whole thought process was that traditional architecture suggests that right now everything is interconnected right now, and everything's connected to a central identity platforms like Active Directory or a Azure Active Directory over there, and every identity flows through that. But in real scenarios, at least as of modern scenarios, that's not the case. You have service accounts, you have humans who are actually using applications which are not connected to IDP systems, and with new platforms right now, you have AI agents, which are absolutely not connected to any sort of identity system right now. They operate on a very different level. And these are the connections still that happen between app to application itself. So there are no scenarios right now wherein the traditional model would fit into the current ecosystem. So with that, what we have done is we really wanted to build a very foundational layer which can connect across multiple different systems, get all the data, and this becomes like a data catalog of all of these identities itself, as well as across users and what access they have across these applications as well right now. That was the initial thought about how we started the company.
Thanks for that, Chaitanya. It's very fascinating insight. But tell you one thing about the non-human identities. How are you sort of tracking them? Not only tracking, governing them, are you using AI to detect AI?
Oh, absolutely right. So for every single user, there's close to about 40 to 45 identities which are not humans. So that's the ratio, 1 is to 40 to 45, depending on company to company. So if you have 10,000 users in the organization, 10,000 employees, you would actually find close to 450,000 non-human identities.
Wow.
So with that, right now, you can only get this information right now when you are able to deeply connect to these particular integrations. It's extremely difficult for a human to actually distill all this information. So we are using AI to kind of map AI and detect AI agents as well. So that was the initial setup that we started out with as well.
Great. Okay. So my last question to you, Chaitanya, is really about this: how defensible is your technology?
In today's world right now, nothing is 100% defensible. But at the same time, right now, the learnings that we had in the last 5 years to get to where we are right now, if someone's actually starting off, it may not take 5 years to build them, but it could take maybe 2 to 3 years. Another area where we are really focusing on is using AI. Can I be a lot more predictive with the data that we have, which technically no other company would actually have this amount of data right now? Can I be a lot more proactive in actually suggesting this? Can I build better insights with AI right now? Can I build a lot more advanced systems itself that can actually help companies to prevent security risks before they actually happen? Let's say malevolent actor is actually acting using an AI agent right now. Can I stop the access itself before it impacts a lot more higher? So these are all the new challenges that we have right now, and those are the new items that we're working on for the next couple of years.
Thanks for that, Chaitanya. Thank you so much for taking us through a technological journey.
Thank you.
Hello, so I'm here with Setu Meenakshi Sundaram to talk about the Act 3 of the Zluri journey. Setu actually moved his base to the US to look after the revenue and the strategy expansion of the company. Setu, my sheer pleasure and privilege to have you here. My first question to you: we spoke about the non human identity market opportunity, and Ritesh alluded to this is Srija. What we are talking about is how do you control what you cannot see or what you don't know? And when you talk about something like that, it basically unravels a huge market opportunity because what we saw in the SaaS sprawl, we are seeing in the AI sprawl. And the good thing about this is that when you talk about AI to anybody, in some or the other way, they have toyed with it, they've experimented with it. So to tell them that what could be the potential dangers or challenges, what this industry brings with itself, is not necessarily such a difficult conversation. You don't necessarily have to educate the market. But Setu, from your personal experience that you are having to do, shifting your base to the US, first of all, why do you think it was extremely important in the evolution of Zluri for the revenue head to not to be in India, but to be in the US?
Sure, great question, Srija. Thank you for having me here. Uh, so one of the reason I shifted to the United States is the predominant customer base of Zluri is in the US. We have customers in EMEA, Latin America, of course APAC as well, but predominantly significant revenue for Zluri comes from the US. Hence, I shifted there because you need to be closer to the customer base who gives you the money. That's important to hear what they think and helps you build the product in the right direction too, right? Any wave that's going to hit the world of technology starts from the bay. So I think being there just helps push back a lot of the thoughts back into the company. Hence, I think this move has been not the easiest, I'm sure. Right, a lot of founders who move from India to the US can allude to that. It's not easy, but boy, it's worth it.
So the customer conversations, give us some color about that on the ground sense. You think it's a more evolved kind of a customer base there, which perhaps appreciates an identity security coming out of India, or do you think that's actually constrained because the other countries which have sort of better kind of reception? Look at Israel, for example. You think the opening the door of an Israeli company is much quicker than for an Indian company to do that?
100%, right? You hit it on the nail. The thing is, one in every two company in Israel is a security company, right? And I think maybe a little bit of trivia here. I love quizzing. So the first security product that came into the world was a firewall. And which company started the firewall product? It was a company called Checkpoint, which is from Israel. So right from early 90s till today, every dominant security company in the world is an Israeli company, right? And that's how it has always been. So which means it's like a rite of passage for a Israeli company to start a security company. Now, how many such companies have come out of India? Not so much, right? India's always produced phenomenal consumer tech companies, SaaS companies, IT service companies, but not so much in the security space to begin with, right? And I think that's the challenge that Zluri has as a company while trying to build the market in the United States, right? But boy, once we get an entry into a customer prospect conversation, then after seeing the value we provide and the product they see, then we have relatively had a positive chance to win over an Israeli company. But where the challenge I've seen is to get the same reception as them to begin with. But the moment we are allowed inside the same arena with a good fight, we're able to win those fights. Number two, your question about is how evolved is the customer base, right? And I think any technology that comes in first hits the US market, right? Think of every era of technology, be it the internet, be it the consumer tech. It's always an American company that started first, which means they're the first to make mistakes, right? Which means they're the fastest to learn as well. So the kind of conversations that I end up having in the United States are easily 2 to 3 years ahead of any other market. And I think that helps us to know how to build the product and where to, show the company for revenue. All of that really helps.
So, how big is your team in the US? I mean, how has the journey been from, say, your first client to where you are right now? You said that, Shrija, getting the foot in the door is a difficult part, but that is perhaps the job half done. So, one is getting into the door, but how do you make sure that you are embedded with that customer for a very, very long time?
Yeah. So so we didn't jump into the US immediately, right? So US was a discovery process for us while building the company, and it happened to be successful. So our initial go to market for the US was orchestrated from India. And why were we able to be successful is because the proof of the pudding is in the eating, which means every prospect who came to us before the judging us, we said, hey, why don't you test our product? Let us do a proof of value for you, right? And if it's worth it, you buy us, else you don't have to. And by proving the proof of value, buying 10,000 miles away from the United States market, we're actually able to shore up the first 100 customers. And I tell this to everyone that the first 100 customers Zluri acquired, we acquired without stepping foot into the country. And the interesting part is, I have never stepped foot into the US before starting Zluri. So when I migrated to the US, I probably visited US a couple of times as a visitor. But when my wife and two kids, when they came with us, that's the first time they ever stepped into the US as for migration, right? You can imagine the challenges, right? But why would a founder take that bet and do this? It's because of the potential. Now, being onshore in the United States, we're able to work with Fortune 100 companies too. And I think if you want to up your game and play the real enterprise play, I think it just warrants you to be in the United States so that you can actually attract that market.
So, I were to put you in a hot seat right now. Suppose I'm the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. It just feels nice to think like that. So, how would your 2 minute pitch look like to me?
Great questions. There you go. Hey, Srija, nice to meet you. You are the CISO of a large company, and you are responsible for security of not just your employees, your customers' data, employees' data. Can I ask you a question? At any point in time, Srija, if somebody asks you who has access to what system in your company to get what job done, do you have the answer?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, great. We're getting somewhere. And that's exactly the question Zluri is able to answer. At any point in time, if you, the CISO of the company, and if you want to know where is my every single employee, every single non-human, every single AI agent that's going to come up, what systems are they having access to what level of depth, so that it tells them what they can do and what they cannot do. If there is one system that needs to help you solve the problem, that will be Zluri. And why should you care about this? Because you are under Sarbanes-Oxley Act because you're a public listed company and you're also in healthcare, so which means you're going to be bound by HIPAA. And all of these compliance in the United States asks you to be compliant and governed at all times, which means you can't have a reactive answer to some of the questions your auditors would ask. You had to be real time, which is what Zluri can give you right answer to at all times. So hope you wish you could see our product.
Thank you for your time and energy to this Setu and taking us through your journey in the US and how an organization like Zluri is thinking about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Srija.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.
So we heard from Ritesh and the team at Zluri as to how they're really gearing up for the next big move, really dominating the IGA space. It's not time for the investor perspective. With me is Satish Andhra, who's a managing partner at Endiya Partners and those who actually wrote the first institutional check to Zluri. Satish, my sheer pleasure and privilege to have you at the Meet with Endiya series. We just heard the founders at the Zluri team, and one could really understand that they moved from SaaS management to what is IGA right now, and very well positioned to sort of really capture that space. From an investor perspective, what gave you that conviction and confidence that they can actually compete very credibly in that complex space?
One of the key things, Shrija, is that I always say that 90% of the startups have, succeed on, a plan B, not the plan A with which they start originally. Every startup has almost goes through a second life. but very few startups ever have a third life, right? So clearly, I think. But that said, from day one, I think Zluri's data model was, the complete life cycle of software. They would discover, and then they would catalog, and then they would enable provisioning of software, provisioning of the user, and deprovisioning, and then usage, so that you could optimize on your expense, and also then governance. So that was the data model, that they had built from day one. So initial traction was from SaaS management, which is really discovery of all the SaaS assets within an enterprise environment, and then usage of the same by particular department or a particular user so that they can negotiate the contracts. Shadow IT is a huge problem, right, within these enterprises, especially the fact that SaaS can be subscribed by just swiping a credit card. Now, obviously, after first year or second year, when a customer buys your product, they see that they have gotten the value, and later years it'll only be incremental value when you're looking at contract or expense management. And that's kind of when the team realized that there's a bigger problem, and that problem is centered around the governance aspect, the privileges, the administrative access. How do you make decisions? Who could access what? Fundamentally, imagine like a house. You've given keys. Primarily, your maid will get access to few rooms, your cook will get access to a kitchen, and then maybe your caretaker will get access to a few more rooms. But somebody is deciding that, listen, you all have keys to the house, but each one of you get access to, specific portions of the house, right? That's kind of how an enterprise will also have to decide the policy, based on identity. How do you create the access? And that's kind of where they found, that absolutely they have a great opportunity because of the data model. They started executing, and they're doing really well.
Thanks for explaining that so well, Satish, giving us such a clear picture on that sort of analogy of the house and what the identity to the access space. But when you are building a company like Zluri, it is not necessarily built on hype. It's a strong product, right, which can only be built on metrics, strong growth metrics. So what is it that you are tracking at Zluri, which is telling you it is solid and it's really working?
Clearly, I think, for any of the software companies, whether it's software or, it could be fintech, e-commerce, deep tech, it doesn't matter, any vertical. If you're not one of the top 3 or top 5 players, right, in your category, then absolutely, you're non-existent, from the ecosystem perspective. And it's also very difficult for you to get the premium, value, monetization. As you know, with the brand and with that position, table stakes, you get a lot of leverage. You lose that leverage if you really don't exist. So one of the things we look at is, are they in the top 3, 5, in that category? That's number one. And how do we look at? I mean, there has to be external validation. It's not our lens or founder lens. It's got to be an analyst lens, right? And the second thing is really the growth. I mean, are you growing 300%, 400%, and year on year? Who are the type of customers, and why are they buying your piece of software? What exactly are the drivers, for your success? And conversion rates, the marketing qualified leads to sales calls to demos and POCs, and eventually converting them into purchase orders and the contract value. So we look at all of those metrics to derive comfort that it's just not that we're drinking our own Kool-Aid, and this is really translating into value for the customer in the field. The other thing is that, in a security space, especially like identity governance or identity security posture management, channel play becomes extremely important. Our partners coming to you, why are they coming to you? These folks all, are like 15, 20 years old, and they've grown with the security domain. So now when they come to you and say, we'd like to partner with you, that's when you discover why you are unique and why are they soliciting, this particular relationship. And these are some of the metrics that we look at to say that, we're absolutely navigating in the right direction.
Thanks for that, Satish. When I also spoke with Ritesh and the team, I think they really emphasized on the fact that, Shrija, how do you deal with the unknown? because you don't know what the unknown is, right? And of course, the reference was made to this entire sprawl of AI, which we don't necessarily know of at all. In any organization, there'll be human employees, and I think it's positioned that there'll be more AI employees or AI bots or agents. So, how aligned are you with that sort of vision of the team that the IGA model that they're building on will not necessarily be more built around the AI economy?
Well, I think, I firmly believe that all of this have to coexist, right? I think while the world predicts that, SaaS apocalypse, AI will kill SaaS. I do believe software will be there. I do believe SaaS will be there. I do believe AI will also be there. So they'll all coexist. And the fact that they coexist, the sprawl will continue, right? I think a SaaS, the original software, very, very disciplined. Finance would procure based on line of business, requirement, and then a service provider, an IT service provider, or a company would then implement and then they roll out. That's a fairly organized process. When it came to SaaS, you're going there and buying using a credit card, or just buying it on Stripe or whatever. That's when the SaaS sprawl happened. Now AI, kind of worsens that problem, right? Because you have so many agents which are non-human identities that are part of your environment, right? There are APIs, there are service calls, and all of that happening. External agents trying to access, part of your workflow, and then your own internal agents, that you've deployed, right, to do work for you, for to kind of streamline your business processes. So how do you now create a policy that covers all of this end to end, right? So first, piece is really visibility. You have to discover them, catalog them, and then what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. What is not visible, you cannot even, govern, right? So that's the first part. The second part is really, what is your posture, right? What is your security posture management? And then how do you, kind of monitor the governance, right? Administration. Then there's something called runtime authorization. Just before runtime, how do you really kind of manage this whole thing? And today, if you see more and more, code is going to be written by, obviously, the co-pilots or vibe coding platforms. So you also have to look at, certain issues that come up because of this behavior. And finally, the threat detect and response, right, becomes the whole life cycle. So from that perspective, I think AI only makes this very interesting, while it also becomes very complex. And that's why, a few players who understand how to do it will win this in the medium to long term. And so we're very excited for Zluri.
And what is your one constant advice to the Zluri team in terms of how well they are positioned and when they are sort of exploring this journey on this non-human identities in the IGA space? What are the one or two things in which you think they can actually go wrong?
No, I think that they can go wrong in many ways, right? At the end of the day, when you're selling to North American clients, you need to be there. One of the founders, Setu, is in the Bay Area, right? I mean, he's visiting customers every day. He's working with partners every day. So the key is, when you implement, is your customer able to leverage your solution, and are they deriving value, right? I think so. Clearly, you're going to see lots of new companies attacking this, like AI natives. Existing guys are going to throw AI extensions. So in all of these maze, how do you really carve out a position for yourself? And that's the resilience we look for in the founding teams. I mean, between Ritesh and Chaitanya and Setu and many other people that they have brought on board. Very clearly, are they listening to the customers, working with the partners, and are they talking to analysts, and do they have a vision of their own, and how is it all coming together to show demonstrable progress? That's what we look for.
Thanks for that, Satish. If there was one word to define the Zluri sort of experience for you, what would that really be?
No, I think it's kind of a sprint as well as a marathon. I think a lot of times what ends up happening for entrepreneurs, they get off a quick start, scale up really well, raise a couple of rounds of funding. Then they have to thank their stars that it happened for them. And then they have to sit back and reflect and say, now, how do I course correct? And how do I really, create my next leg of the journey? I think good teams have the character and caliber to do that. And I do believe that Zluri team is a wonderful team, and they have great skill sets, and they have plenty of good talent, and they will execute really well. And that's the journey we look for.
But talking about AI, I can't sort of let you go off talking about this entire AI thing. I mean, the hype, the fad, or the fact, the reality. Sort of which side of the lens should one sort of lean towards, you think?
Yeah, is your question from IGA perspective or overall in
Or
general?
AI perspective.
No, I think AI, our view, Endiya view is very, very clear, right? I think we look at, four different segments, right? AI trailblazers. Trailblazers are people who are creating disruptive innovation within AI. It could be models, or it could be inferencing chips, it could be interconnect chips, at higher speeds. All of this technology, that's a fundamental layer. So these are called AI trailblazers. The majority of them are in the US, in the San Francisco, Bay Area, right? Now, AI users is the other bucket. All of us are AI users. We've seen proliferation of AI within an enterprise world, people using AI for software development, AI for marketing, sales, customer support, streamlining the back office. Now, that kind also embedding certain amount of AI, in their own product. Now, the middle, two buckets are, primarily AI innovators and AI extensions, right? Amplifiers. So innovators are vertical, AI companies. I mean, we've invested in a company like Mayutic. Mayutic is primarily an agentic AI platform for chip design. If you could do software design, why can't you do chip design, right? And then you look at Perceptine, it's a physical intelligence system, primarily industrial robots, automating electronics and, automotive manufacturing tasks. So these are vertical AI apps. We just invested in Third AI. Third AI is root cause analysis using causal correlation, both in terms of incident triage and using that knowledge for predictive maintenance, right? And now the AI extensions or amplifiers are folks like take Scrut, which has done teammates, right? Or Darwinbox. Darwinbox is an AI agent for recruitment, AI agent for performance management, AI agent for leave attendance payroll. On your existing platform where you're a system of record, you embed the AI capability. So we feel that, you look at trailblazers, users, innovators, amplifiers. I think India has a huge opportunity. Yes, India will have a few trailblazers, local language models, where you need the data, you need to train the models. Definitely, there'll be some innovation in terms of semiconductors and stuff like that. But otherwise, predominantly will be playing in these two buckets, which is AI innovators, vertical AI, building applications, or AI amplifiers. It could be services software as well.
Thanks for that, Satish. And that's a very sort of interesting way to sort of look at the entire AI trajectory. Thank you so much, Satish, giving us such sort of close perspective on your portfolio company, Zluri. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we get a ringside view of Zluri, a company born out of a structural shift inside modern enterprises. SaaS exploded across teams, creating a world where companies lost visibility into what they were buying, using, and renewing. But today, the challenge has evolved far beyond SaaS sprawl. Enterprises are now facing AI sprawl, a rapidly growing ecosystem of co-pilots, AI tools, models, and automations quietly embedding themselves into daily workflows. The stack is no longer just software, it is intelligence. And intelligence without governance becomes risk. Zluri recognized this early. What began as SaaS management evolved into something far more strategic. A control layer for the AI-first enterprise. A unified platform where IT, finance, and security teams can discover, govern, optimize, and automate both SaaS and AI ecosystems in real time. Backed by investors like Endiya partners, Zluri is building for a future where enterprise clarity becomes a competitive advantage. Because in the age of AI, the real power is not just intelligence, it is intelligence with control.
Endiya Partners, the co-founder VC for entrepreneurs building world-class product startups, empowering visionary founders to build transformative companies.